Okay, so good evening, everybody at Health Dame. This is Robin Strongin, and tonight I'm here with Jarrett Brown, who I'm very excited to be speaking with. And we're going to hear about Jarrett's work in advocacy, very personal story. And without any further ado, Jarrett, I'm going to ask you to just introduce yourself and then I'll fire away a million questions. But I won't do justice. So why don't you take it away? I will just say for the record, we didn't meet that long ago. We had the opportunity, we met randomly at an autoimmune association advocacy event, and you shared your story there. And I was really taken with your ability to share a personal story, but the elegance with which you talked about the work that you're doing on behalf of many, many people with autoimmune disease. And we'll talk about that more broadly as we continue the conversation. But as you can see, I keep interrupting. So
Oh,
take it away.
by all means.
Yeah.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Robin, so much for your time and for having me on your platform. My name is Jarrett Brown. I am I'm so sorry. I'm battling the ending stages of a cold here, so
Not to
I'm
mention the
single-handedly going to
pollen.
destroy
Yeah.
the audio here. Uh, I'm sorry. I'm Jarrett Brown. I am the founder of Jarrett Speaks. I have had vitiligo since I was 3 years old. Vitiligo is a dermatological disease that your body essentially attacks the melanocytes or the pigment in your skin. And there's no real rhyme or reason. We're still trying to figure all that out. So I've had vitiligo since I was three. I spent a long time, as many people, not wanting to deal with my vitiligo or talk about it. I just kind of wanted to fit in and be normal and not have to address it. And through working with other advocacy programs, namely Beautiful and Blemish Vitiligo Support Group. They're the ones who kind of found me and brought me into the forefront, and so many other great groups. I've been able to find my voice and start building my own platform, Jarrett Speaks, which is built on transforming a personal journey with vitiligo into a public mission that focuses on amplifying patient voices, bridging the gap between the people, the patients, and healthcare providers and insurance companies and the business end, and driving empathy in action. So there's my elevator pitch.
Fair enough. Let's start at a super high level. So you mentioned autoimmune disease. So
Yes.
for people who may not know, it's a term we hear a lot, but what does that mean?
So an autoimmune disease is essentially when your body has, I'll put it in very, very simple terms. Your body
Yeah.
has soldiers that are supposed to fight off infection. Your body has its own defense system, and it's supposed to see the bad things and keep you safe and protect the good things. When you have an autoimmune disease, for some reason, your body kind of gets confused and can attack some of the good guys instead of the bad guys. And in my case, my autoimmune disease decides to attack my pigment. Fortunately for me, it is not a physically painful disease. It does have some other side effects, but autoimmune diseases can come in many types that can affect all types of organs and all types of abilities in a person. The thing with autoimmune diseases is they're very rarely visible. A lot of times you might not know that somebody who seems like they're perfectly fine and functioning at a high level is actually battling every day with an autoimmune disease.
What would an example of that be? Some type of disease like that.
I'll give one that I've worked with sometimes. This is kind of, and I guess I'll be careful and say this ventures on. Some people say it's autoimmune, some people say it's auto-inflammatory. A disease like sarcoidosis. Sarcoidosis is a disease where your body builds up. I don't want to get too far into the technicalities, but essentially cells inside that are not cancerous, but they're almost cancer-like, and they can affect everything from breathing and respiration to your sight, et cetera, et cetera. You end up with just nodules. Another one, hidradenitis suppurativa. That's a physical one, and sometimes it's very visible. But sometimes there's people who have hidradenitis suppurativa, which is painful boils that can be anywhere where there's a hair follicle. So you might not know it, but that person sitting next to you might be in extreme amounts of pain because they have a boil that's no fault of their own that they cannot necessarily treat. They just kind of have to wait for it to go and run its course. And there are treatments, but as with most autoimmune diseases, the treatments are not instantaneous, and it's kind of a you battling those soldiers and hoping that the treatment actually kind of wins out and gives you some relief. But there's
And
no.
In doing some research for our conversation tonight, my understanding is that it's not uncommon. If someone's diagnosed with one autoimmune disease, it often is true that they may, over a lifetime, experience multiple autoimmune disease. Not always, but it's not
Absolutely.
uncommon. Is that
Absolutely. Yes, it's right. And it's a thing that we're learning more about now. And now those of us with autoimmune diseases are learning that, okay, once you have one autoimmune disease, don't live in fear that you're going to have another autoimmune disease immediately, but it gives you another reason to keep an eye on your health and to run checks that other people might not run, and to have blood work and labs done, and to pay special attention just to make sure that you're not ending up with compounding autoimmune diseases, and that one symptom that's usually prominent in one autoimmune disease is not maybe a bridge to another one.
so? In your case, since there are a range of autoimmune diseases, some of them are there are a lot of people, and some of them they're more rare or less common. And that there are different specialists who treat. There is not an autoimmune specialty per se, right? It could be it could be arthritis, it could be a
Mhm.
rheumatologist, it could be a
Absolutely.
dermatologist. So it's all over the map. And I think that's what makes some of the advocacy work tricky, not unlike cancer, where there isn't one cancer. There are many types of cancers. There are many types of autoimmune disease. And when you're
Absolutely.
advocating, I know you've done a lot of advocacy work in the research side of things and clinical trials. And that's where, your advocacy, well, your voice comes in many different ways, let's say, because I know you recently had an op-ed that was posted in,
Yeah.
I want to say, USA Today. And
Yes. Yeah.
say a little bit about that and why you decided to share there. Yeah. And we will, for everyone listening, we will be including on the website links to the op-ed and all of the organizations that we're talking about, so people will have resources. So that will be, we'll take care of posting those.
Yeah, the op-ed was a gift that was bestowed upon me by the Coalition of Skin Disease and cooperation with Global Vitiligo Foundation. They were asked if anybody had a voice that might want to talk about their journey. I was approached and I jumped at the opportunity. It was really personal to me because I had just finished clinical trials of a new treatment for vitiligo, and I have done several phases of this clinical trial. Having had vitiligo for 40 years, you or I have undergone several different treatments, then a clinical trial, and different phases of the insurance life cycle. Insurance
Yes.
has definitely progressed and regressed in many ways, and depending on who your insurance carrier is and what your elections are and who your employer is, it's a shell game. And I wrote that article just really saying that we're in a despite how whatever you may feel about where we are with government and business, et cetera, we are at a new time in technology when it comes to health and well-being. We're seeing new treatments and new medicines that we've never dreamt of, that we didn't think that we'd have before, and they're actually coming to fruition. However, with that being said, there's still this huge unknown as to there's care right there. But will I have access to it? Will my insurance be okay to get that? Will it be priced at an affordable way? Will that newest treatment be available at the clinic or at my physician that's down the street? Or do I have to take a flight or a bus, a train, a car if I live in a place where transportation is not, or I'm in a financial position where transportation is not accessible to me? It was just really personal to me because I've met so many people who many people don't want care, and some who do want care. They say, "Hey, I want care, but it's just so burdensome to get it. It's so expensive to get it. I don't even know what's out there. I heard there's something new, but I'm skeptical." And my thing is, I'm just really would love to bridge that gap between the 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 care providers, the insurance providers, the pharmaceutical companies, and the patient. It seems to me that a lot of times the patient's kind of the last person in the chain of care. Everybody kind of develops markets and prices, and then it's like then there's the patient, and we need to
So
bring
we're
the
going to
patient.
come back to that because that is monumentally central to just about every conversation I have, because I wouldn't be having any conversations if it weren't for individuals, the patient and their caregivers. But so just to clarify, a lot of what you talked about happens after a clinical trial. Clinical trials can be tricky too. First of all, getting recruited in. Are there enough people of color in clinical trials? How is recruitment conducted? I mean, I'm old enough, I'm way older than you, to know that, clinical trials, patients used to have to pay to be in clinical trials. They had to pay for parking and care, let alone other things. So, not to mention, clinical trials used to be for middle-aged, white, healthy, heterosexual, non-pregnant men. And that was the gold standard. And we've been pushing for the platinum standard, which is where it's moving. The needle has moved, to be sure, but not far enough, as is true in most of health. So there's the clinical trial and where the research happens. And
Mhm.
that is a pretty tricky process to begin with. But you've participated, and part of your advocacy is to encourage the innovators to continue to look at diseases where there may not be millions and millions and millions of people, but an N of one is still really important to figure out and help an individual who's struggling with something. And then once a clinical trial gets to the point where the Food and Drug Administration has cleared it to be the product to be able to be on the market so that, someone with your condition could have access, then there's the whole insurance, set of challenges, the whole educate the physician, the caregivers, and certainly we call them social determinants of health these days. We've called them other things in the past, but the transportation, is there time off from work, all the things that you articulate in your op-ed and in your advocacy work. And so are taking your story, and you mentioned that it may not be physically painful, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other types of pain that come along with a condition that people can see and people may be confused about. And that
Absolutely.
can't be easy for anybody.
Absolutely. No, you hit it right on the head. I mean, everything you said is spot on. Getting to the point of getting in a clinical trial, I don't even know how I got in the clinical trial. Unfortunately, I was able to do phase 2 and phase 3. I've had
Oh,
people
wow.
ask me,
Okay. So
how
that's
did you get in
very
the clinical?
far along. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I had people ask, how did you get in the clinical trial? I honestly don't know. I received a survey. I took it. I ended up there. My mom was very skeptical of this clinical trial. She didn't want me to participate in it. Black folks don't have a great history of being
No,
experimented
they
on.
don't.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so
That's
there's
true.
that. And then
Yes.
there's the part that once you're in a clinical trial, it really is somewhat of a black box. I have no idea what I'm putting in my body. I know what some of the side effects might be. I know what the hope is, but I don't really know the timeline or the efficacy or
Experience when you were in the clinical trial, were you treated respectfully? Were you given answers to all of your questions?
I definitely was not given answers to all of my questions. And I think that's because the facilitator of the clinical trial did not know the answers to the questions. The way the clinical trial that I was part of worked was I went to a nurse's office and it seemed that they did many clinical trials, almost like a ghost kitchen of clinical trials. So they knew basically the same packet that I had access to. They knew those answers. And anytime I had a question, they could go ask. And then maybe they'd bring some information back, but it wasn't always very forthcoming. There was some side effects that I believe there's a direct linkage to that weren't really accounted for. And as far as the people there, the staff there that was excellent though. So I will say the staff was excellent, but there's very little incentive to do a clinical trial for me at least. At 43, I'm pretty much settled into my skin disorder. That clinical trial is a 2-hour drive each way.
How
Initial
often did you have to go?
once a month, and the initial uh, uh, payment was $65 a visit. It doesn't cover train, it doesn't cover gas, it doesn't cover time off work, it doesn't cover meals. So there's very little incentive to do it. So it's definitely a hardship and a difficult thing to do. You just kind of have to do it for the love of doing it. And then once
The
it's
greater
over, it's over.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Once
Yeah.
it's over, it's over. For me, phase 2 went wonderful. But once phase 2 was over, I couldn't get access to that drug anymore. It was over. So now I had to watch my progress regress. And I just had to wait until phase 3. Fun fact, phase 3 didn't have any effect for me. I actually got worse. So it's a difficult, you got to want to do it for the right reasons. You have to want to do it because my thing was if I could help to find a drug that makes one person, one kid's first day of school easier, whereas you remember what I talked about at DC, gets one more person to a disease party, then that's worth it for me. But knowing that there's so many people who have not left the house or just the elephant in the room take their own lives because it's just very, very difficult or go through deep depression because they're combating finances and stigmas, etc. That's all that it made it.
Do you think that a skin condition like yours, did it affect the ability for employment because of, you mentioned stigma, or
Here's
it's
the thing.
hard to say?
I'll never know. That's the crazy. I joke that having a skin disorder, or having not even just a skin disorder, having an outward difference,
Mhm.
whether it's a skin disorder or any sort of disability or just difference, can create somewhat of a mental illness of
Yeah,
sorts. And the
no
reason I
kidding.
say that is because the thing that's typically diagnosed, I always say clinicians diagnose this as an autoimmune disease. Insurance companies will often diagnose it as cosmetic. For me, I'd say it's very much manifested more as a mental disorder than anything because I've spent so much of my life worrying about how other people will see. Now, some people are wonderful with that. They don't care who thinks what about, and I've gotten very good at that over the years. But when you've had vitiligo since you were 3, as a kid, it's a little bit
Oh,
difficult.
I imagine it was just absolutely crushing and bruising
I
so
joke that
hard.
it's made the best parts and worst parts of me. So it's made me very social and able to have conversations like this. But it's also made me probably too good in clapping back at somebody who says something inappropriate to me. So there's that balance. But the thing is, I'll never know what friend groups I wasn't included in. I'll never know what date that I didn't get. I know. Don't get me wrong. There's some funny stories. There's some stories where I've seen somebody look at me and see my skin like, oh no, never mind. But I'll never know if I didn't get that job, etc. But what I will say for me, and the thing that I hope that it manifests for many people, is that it's like a weight, and the more you push a weight, the stronger you get, and that's what happened for me. But I also had the spotter of support groups and other advocacy environments, et cetera, that helped me get that weight off my chest and helped me build that strength.
But you were willing to do the hard work of being part of a support group and seeking it out. That's really hard to do that from, lots
Actually,
of
I
people are,
did.
yeah.
That's the thing. I didn't do it. So Tanta Johnson, she's the founder of Beautiful and Blemish Vitiligo Support Group. Once again, God works in mysterious ways. I have no idea how Tanta found me. She said, "Hey, we need some men who had vitiligo for a long time to come speak. Come speak." And I did everything I could to get Tanta to leave me alone. But that woman has the resilience of a saint. I have no idea how she got me to come to an event. And I came reluctantly and I spoke. I even told her I was going to be very mean about my speech. I said, I'm going to say that you know, punch somebody in the face and make it rid of vitiligo. And she said, if that's how you feel, then come on. I said, all right. I didn't say that though.
Yeah.
And what it was for me was seeing other beautiful people, other cool people who looked like me.
Yeah.
I saw other, you know, men and women who are like, that's a good looking guy. And he got attention. He's having a good time. I'm no different than him. Okay. Oh, she's beautiful. She has skin like me too. And being in those environments and just having fun and realizing that it wasn't just when I thought support group, and I think we kind of need to change the name of support groups.
Well, I couldn't agree more.
It was
Shouldn't
going
be
to be a
the
bunch of
other
us sitting in
name.
a
Yeah.
chair, crying
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
how hard it is and how sad. Nah, you know what I'm saying? It was a disease party. It was a bunch.
Exactly. And that's the thing. When you said at the autoimmune advocacy event, you came out, I've been to, can't even count the number of advocacy patient events I've been to over the past 40 plus years in DC. No one ever came up with the two words together, disease party. And I thought, and I do communication. So I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Where has this man been? This is fantastic. It's like,
Get embrace the moment.
was just magic. And I think we need to
And to me,
change the names of things.
it's very simple, and it goes a couple ways. We were all in the same position. We're most of us strangers. So we had a bunch of strangers who had become friends, and we could have done. We had a couple options we could have done. We could have sat there and wilted and just kind of sat around and talked about how sad we were about what we were doing, but we didn't. You looked around the room, and it was a bunch of amazing looking people who had walked around DC that day, exhibited strength, and we're having conversations, we're networking, we're having, cocktails, etc. It was a party with a bunch of people who just had individual, unique autoimmune diseases. So to me, it's one of those things. Hey, let's call it like it is. Let's embrace the positivity in it, and let's give ourselves a reason to come to the next one. Push forward.
100%. There were people who were Olympic athletes there. I mean, it's like you could live
Yep,
your
I
life
got
with a disease and still have a party. And, it's not easy, not at all
absolutely.
easy, but it's doable. It's really hard. But people like you who are willing to just put things out there. I know you probably get tired of hearing it, but it is inspirational and it gives people hope. And that's the thing that really, to me, when the world seems to be going completely off the rails in healthcare and elsewise, knowing that there are still people willing to go to work and do the research and the discovery and the innovation, knowing there are people who are really trying to power the clinical studies, the clinical trials, and knowing there are people like you who are fearless about talking to people in halls of power, because none of the policy changes, you talk about the insurance barriers, you talk about pricing barriers, you talk about all kinds of barriers. Shame on us if we have the science, but we don't have, as there have been many articles recently written, that if the infrastructure wrapped around the science doesn't work, that's the tragedy. Because what good is an innovation if you can't have access to it? There's no value there. And that's just, it's idiotic. So it's criminal, actually, because you're causing people not to live their best life. And we've got to change that. And so I personally just want to thank you for everything you're doing. And you are absolutely right that we have to make sure patients continue to get not just the recognition, but their time valued by all the players in the healthcare, we call it ecosystem, to not
Absolutely.
just say that they're patient centered, but actually act like they're patient centered and put their money where their mouth is. I'll just put it out there.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you talk about access and the time it takes. I'm fortunate enough that I was just able to be afforded a piece of equipment that I can do treatments at home. But without that piece of equipment, and my first treatment today, which I did today, was 17 seconds long.
Oh my,
And the treatments usually increase in time increments of 3 seconds. So that's how much time I actually spend in treatment. Without that piece of equipment at home, I would have to drive to my dermatologist's office. My dermatologist's office is about 45 minutes without traffic. It can be an hour, hour and a half with traffic. So you take in the fact that I have to take off work, drive an hour to an hour and a half each way, check in the office, wait in the waiting room for 17 seconds worth of treatment, and then pay on top of that.
yeah.
Imagine how how tiring that is on an individual, especially if you have children you have to pick up and care for, you have other errands you have to run, and then you have to get your employer to actually excuse you every single day because dermatologist office don't stay much open much later than 5 p.m. So every single or 3 times a day in this case, it's a burden that's just not accounted for. It goes beyond time. It goes, I mean, cost. It goes into cost, time, mental anguish, et cetera, et cetera.
And not to mention, people with one condition often have other conditions, even if, like now, you have a seasonal cold or terrible allergies or more
Mhm.
complex, comorbidities and other conditions. We have to make it accessible to patients. And that's easier said than done, but unless we're all willing to work together to figure it out and keep fighting these good fights, and that's what we're doing. And I think, this notion of a disease party, let's just roll up our sleeves and
Hey,
frankly just get shit done already.
I'm with it. I
Because
love it.
the heck are we waiting for?
And the thing is, we have the resources. I mean, we're seeing so many treatments now. We have the resources. Like you said, it's criminal that we have the resources, and there are people who could use them, and they're just not able to get. They're sitting right there unused.
And I do want to underscore that for so many health conditions, it is insufficient to stop after a physical diagnosis. Any
Yeah,
kind of chronic condition comes with so much mental anguish in every different form. And until we treat this as, a continuum of what needs to be dealt with for a human being, we're not doing this. It's not patient centered,
I
right?
will always shout out my one PA at the dermatologist's office, Gina Mankin, because she's the first PA.
Physician assistant, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
physician assistant. First medical professional to ever ask me how I was doing. And she sat down, she took a seat. I know she probably had 15 minutes to
About
get.
how old were you when she asked you that?
So this was probably within the past 8 years. This has been since I moved to Florida, and that changed my. I had stopped going to dermatologists, and my father had said I found this new dermatologist, and they're great. You should go see him. And I sat happened to sit with her, and I was just kind of prepared to be like, go through the motions and get out of there. And she said, "Okay, well, I see you have vitiligo. Let's do a skin check." And they did the light, and He said, how are you doing with this? Like, how's it affect you? You know, what do you know about the treatments that are available? And I told her, and she said, well, this is what I know. And she said, these things are coming down the pipeline. You're right. We need an approach that one doesn't just say, hey, this is what you have. This is the treatments that my office has. But a lot of times I found that one office might not have all the treatments. They might have two of the treatments. There might be three other ones, or two other ones, or four other ones.
Interesting.
And I do believe that we need to get to a point where these offices are saying, hey, this is what I offer and this is why, but here's what this other office offers. And on top of that, it's okay to not be okay. This is probably going to take a little bit of a toll on you. You probably have a lot of questions. I don't know the support groups in the area, but if you Google autoimmune disease, whatever, support group, Cleveland, Orlando, Baltimore, etc., something will probably pop up. It might be good for you to see somebody. I can't refer you to a mental health therapist, but it's good to talk to somebody. On top of that, like, look, here's what you should expect with your treatment. This is the timeline. This is the efficacy rate. These are the side effects. This is what may happen. And this is what happens if you don't treat. I find a lot of times we're not getting the whole picture of our care plan and we're not bought in our care plan. Anybody who's seen me speak has probably heard me say, we have been mostly socialized to respect doctors as an authority, which I agree with. They work very hard for their accreditation. However, when someone's of authority, you typically don't question them. You take what they say, they're the authority, you keep them out your business. However, a lot of times when we go into doctors' offices, we have a laundry list of questions, and then that list just blows away in the wind as soon as we walk in because we ask one question, everything kind of goes away. And then the doctor says, this is what you have, this is what you're going to do. And instead of asking us, hey, does this work for you? These are the side effects. How do you feel about that? Also, here's the options to not treat. How do you feel about that? And
Mhm.
I'm starting to see some insurance providers get better about holistically approaching treatment, not
Okay.
just listing their drugs. Not for insurance providers, I'm sorry, pharmaceutical companies. Pharmacists,
Okay. I was
yeah,
gonna say
yeah,
this is
not insurance.
newsflash, newsflash.
No, no,
Okay,
no, no,
that's
no, no. There's one pharmaceutical company in particular that I've done some work with that I've been really impressed by the fact that they also offer the option to not treat, but will educate you on what that looks like. But I do think we need more of an environment where the patient is bought into their care team. If I'm bought into my care team, I'm more likely to be compliant. I'm likely to be less stressed. And anybody with an autoimmune disease will tell you stress is always a trigger with an autoimmune
sure.
and we're more likely to see results. So
Mhm.
like I said, bridging the gap and wanting to see the whole experience brought forward to the patient. The patient bought in as part of their team and had their voice amplified and heard.
So for the next little 3-year-old guy that just gets diagnosed with vitiligo, what
Yeah,
advice can you give to him? A little guy.
it's hard to say now because times are so much different
It is so
I was
different. Yeah.
when I was diagnosed. When I was diagnosed, there was no internet. There was no Winnie Harlow. There was nobody walking around visibly.
Minnie Harlow is a beautiful model
Yes,
with
she
your condition, and everybody, if you would recognize her, know her, she's famous.
absolutely. There were no pictures in Target or Claire's with people who looked like me. So at the time, I was alone. So even now, I think the thing that I would tell somebody, especially a kid with vitiligo, is you are you. And I know it's very simple, but like your skin isn't you. You have vitiligo, and we say this a lot of times with any autoimmune disease. You have this, it doesn't have you. But like, look, you have vitiligo, it doesn't have you. Get out there, be great, go play. Don't let anybody tell you anything other than you're amazing. And you go out there and be amazing and kick butt. Like that's it. I think for me, it's giving me a really competitive spirit. So that would really be what's first.
Outstanding.
You're gonna get the feedback, but when somebody gives you that feedback that's something negative, go ahead and show them how awesome you are. Don't ever let that affect.
You need to get out there and talk every minute of every day because I'm like ready to
Some people would say
pick
I
up
do.
a torch now, you know? My God. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so I can't close our conversation without my song,
Okay.
without your song, and
All
me
right.
asking you to please share the song that means something really special that we can add to our Health Stream playlist.
Song that's really special to me that I listen to whenever I just need a pump up or just when I'm feeling stressed or I mean, this is kind of a catch-all song. When I'm feeling awesome, I listen to it. When I'm feeling stressed, I listen to it. It's called Be Great and it's by Kevin Ross. And the song is about just resilience through the journey. It's about empowerment and setting the standard. Essentially, no matter what, the goal is to be great.
Be great. And who
People
is
be great. Kevin Ross.
Kevin
And
Ross?
he is from
How do I know?
Yep. Me, I'm
this.
from Baltimore, Maryland. He's from Washington, D.C., or from the DMV area. So it's a little bit special. But yeah, Kevin Ross is a great musician. And that song is just about, hey, you're gonna have people who doubt you, you're gonna have fears, things are gonna be tough, but what's the point of pushing? What's the point of doing anything if you're not gonna be great?
So Disease
That's
Party
right.
theme song.
Absolutely. Yeah,
The
that's
theme
right.
song
That
right
that's
there.
me means a lot to me for that exact reason. Hey, look, we could have all sat back and languished and just been sad about what we have going on. But instead we decided to be great and we're gonna keep on pushing and fighting no matter what's going
Can't love that anymore. It's just so perfect. Oh my God, Jared,
on.
thank you
Thank you.
so much. I know you're so freaking busy, so I'm
Thank you.
really
Busy for you. I appreciate you giving me your platform to amplify my voice. And I'm really excited to work with you again in the future. I'll definitely let you know next time I'm in DC.
absolutely, absolutely. And we will put up all the links that we've talked about and really just keep doing what you're doing. I know there's a lot of little kids that are going to be really their life could be changed because of the work that you're doing. And that's really the beauty of people knowing that, sometimes you get dealt a really hard hand in life, and I know this personally, but there are so many good people who are really there to help lift, you know, other people up. And if we don't do that, I don't know, it's sort of not
Thank
worth
you.
it. But,
Little people. I got a shout out one. So I had the privilege of being in part of Camp Victory. It's a summer camp for children with vitiligo this summer. There's a little girl named Palmer who has vitiligo, and she drew me this robot doing the hula, and I keep it on my desk because Palmer was just so awesome, and she was just so inspirational to me. I don't know if Palmer even knows she has vitiligo because she truly did not care about that or anything else. I just met, marched to the beat of her own drum, and that's an inspiration for me every day. So, absolutely.
that's absolute. What a way to end on such a high note. All right, you feel better. Get rid of that
Thank you.
cold.
Thank
It's
you.
probably pollen. I mean, the pollen here is, well, DC is known for it's a
Well,
nightmare.
oh
But
yeah, yeah.
seriously, thank you for taking the time. And for sure, we're going to be throwing a lot of disease parties and bringing a lot of
Can't wait to be
change
there.
to DC for sure, Jerry. You take
And
care.
an
Keep
invite.
in touch.
Thank
All
you. You
right.
do the same.
Yep.
Bye.
Peace out.